I'd like to introduce our spiritual director, our teacher of courses. There's probably something I've forgotten, Alice, but please help me welcome April Johnston-Ulrich. Please come and be with us, April.
Lovely, thank you. How's everybody doing on Zoom? Can we hear? Just want to check in. We've been having a little bit of difficulty with our sound system. I don't want you to miss this joke. So this will help immensely. I'm yelling at them. Good morning, everyone. So, what do you call a spiritual person with no body and no nose? Nobody knows. Yeah, worked on that one last night. So, good morning, everybody. What a gorgeous day. What a good day to be feeling good. So, I want to talk to you, start off with a conversation about rainbows. What's wonderful about a rainbow? I just learned this week. Did you know that every rainbow is personal? That no two people looking at the same rainbow see it the same. It has to be, it depends on where you're standing. Isn't that interesting? So depending on where you are, the refraction of that rainbow is unique for you. Colors are unique, your perspective is unique. And yet we all agree, I think, that rainbows are a beautiful thing. We enjoy them, we write songs about them, but we don't see them the same. This always led me, when I was starting this spiritual journey, I used to, of course they always ask you to question things. And I remember I had been at a Beyond Limits class, and someone said, I think the lesson was, why do you think people see things the same way you do? Do you? Is the color red the same to me as it is to you? No. How would we know? We have no idea. Because when I use my red and I paint it, I see it as one thing. I have no idea how you see it. I mean, and if you're colorblind, that's a whole other story. So what I love about this teaching is it gets you to stop and think about other perspectives. And when you take offense to something, a lot of the time it's because they're not agreeing with your perspective. They're not seeing that rainbow the same way you see it. Does that mean they're not seeing a rainbow? No. It just means they have a different angle on something. So we can agree it's a rainbow. We can agree we see it differently. But does that mean we're not welcome here? These are the people that see the rainbows only this way. They shouldn't be welcome in this place. That's not what we teach. We teach that we have to be open to how everyone sees that rainbow, what everybody's perspective is. Politically, could not be aligned with yours, but you still have to allow space for that person to be here and value them and love them. And that is the challenge of this work. That's the challenge of the grand rising. With some things it's easy. There's some things that, we have no issues about. And there's other things that are a little more difficult. But I find the more you can expand and make allowances for those that are different, to hold their thoughts, the more magical this world gets. The less I feel like I have to change things, or the less I feel threatened for my own thoughts. Because it creates that space. It creates that wonderful breathing room for everyone. So the gift I give someone else, I ultimately give myself. Because there are opinions, beliefs, etc. that I had in the past that I would die if you found out about. I would die. Are they me? They were at one time. They were things that I thought, and then I learned a new thought, and I changed my mind. And I would hate, I used to want to run for politics, and then I thought, and even when I was younger, I knew you had to watch how you behaved in the world, because it would be brought up, especially if you ran in politics. And now, thank goodness I didn't, because every time I find a picture of a Halloween costume that would be considered very offensive, I'm so happy I didn't, because I figured it would be plastered everywhere. For the beer drinking contests I partaked in university, I hate to see a few of those pictures show up. But we all have them, right? How can we move past that being judged for ideas we had when we were younger, even ideas we had yesterday? We live and we learn. And that's sort of what this talks about today, is how do we move through that as an individual, and how do we do it as a group? How do we get to a place where absolutely anyone can walk through that door and we would say, hi, you want a coffee? Sit down. Doesn't matter who they are. That's what kindness is to me. That's what openness is to me, and that's what learning is to me. Now, there are three things that I wanted to look at today. How to be for something and against nothing. The second is how to allow others their opinions and stay true to ourselves. And three is the collective grand rising, which is our theme for this year. So this entire month, if anybody's kind of listened to the titles, they are the chorus or the refrain to Feeling Good. Michael Bublé recently did it, and Nina Simone. It was quite an anthem for her during, I believe, the 60s. And the first verse is, birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, and I'm feeling good. So how many of you, that's the first thing that crosses your mind when you wake up in the morning? Not a lot, but we're working on it. Last week we talked about waking up with intention, taking that moment, setting our thoughts for the day we want to create, not the one we just want to experience. That we are creative people. That's why we're here. We all realize we have a power, we have ideas, and we're creatively making something every day. So you creatively, with your power, made this morning. How's it go?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Wonderful. So, and we're all co-creating this experience. All of us. What words of mine you take, what words of mine you leave behind. What things trigger you, what things don't trigger you. Right? So how can you be part of this, and as they say, be for something and against nothing? So there's a quote from Ernest Holmes from the Sermon on the Mount, where he says, and I'm going to give you 3 different quotes in a row. The first by Ernest, the second one by Maya Angelou, and the last one by Brene Brown. And the reason I put them in this order is it's simplifying the first quote. So the first quote is in Ernest Holmes' language, and sometimes without the benefit of sort of breaking it down, it can be a little confusing. And then Maya Angelou, who's a little bit more clear and concise on this, and then Brene Brown, who kind of puts it in the language of today. So, find me one person, this is Ernest Holmes, find me one person who is for something and against nothing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of the burden of his own soul, and I will find you another Savior, another Jesus, and an exalted human being. Find me one person who no longer has any fear of the universe or of God or of man or of anything else, and you will have brought to me someone whose presence we may sit, and fear shall vanish as the clouds in the sunlight. Find me someone who has redeemed his own soul, and she shall become my redeemer. Find me someone who has given all that he has in love without morbidity, and I will have found the lover of my soul. This is Maya Angelou. You are free when you realize you belong to no place. You belong to every place. No place at all, the price out, and no place, every place, doing this again. You are free when you realize you belong to no place. You belong to every place. No place at all is the price, forget that quote. I think I wrote it down wrong. Anyway, she's saying you don't belong anywhere, but you belong everywhere, and you belong nowhere. Does that make a lot of sense? So glad I put that one in for clarity. This one's going to go easier, I promise. True belonging is a spiritual practice. It's about the ability to find sacredness in both being a part of something, but also the courage to stand alone. Brene Brown. That one's a little more clear. So what am I trying to get at here with my tongue twister, the Maya Angelou? Oh my goodness, I'm going to be hearing from the Maya Angelou fans. The point is do we have the ability to stand as a group, sit in our groups, and listen to other perspectives, other thoughts, other ideas, and be fine with it? And realize that if it doesn't speak to us, we can say our own truth, and we're still okay. We still belong. So it's the idea of being in this spiritual community and being able to go out and hear something that maybe is contradictory to the way you see the world, and having the courage to say, you know what, I just don't feel that way. That's not how I see things. And do we have the courage to do that with ourselves? And do we have the courage when people say things and they get a little uncomfortable? Do we have the courage to at least have the conversation with them or with ourselves? And I know it's kind of weird. I've been kind of experiencing this a couple of ways this week, which is always the way when you're doing a talk. Those things seem to come up. They're in your consciousness. So last week we had our spiritual circle. And it was interesting. I'm not going to out anybody. But we had a member that was talking from the heart about feeling a calling and feeling that they really needed to do something. And instead of listening with the openness and the security of knowing who I am and what I do and that I'm enough and I'm loved, my insecurity crept in, and I started to sort of intimate why they don't need to do that. Not because I didn't think it was a good thing, but because immediately I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be expected to do this. I'm going to be expected to make this happen. I was never being asked that. This person was saying, I feel a need. So I did the wrong thing. I gave advice. I was so mad at myself. And you know when you're doing something and you realize why you're doing it, you shouldn't be doing this. Why are you doing this? This is against what you believe. I did it. Totally did it, and I felt crappy. Right? I knew it wasn't true with me. And instead of brushing it under and saying, oh, I didn't have a lot of sleep, or, whatever, I just sit and say, what was wrong? What was bothering me? And come up with my truth. And it was about me. It had nothing to do with this person or their ideas. They were admirable. But because of my insecurity, I tainted it with a whole other thing. So another example. This week, there's been so much talk about the Oscars. Film is big in my household. So the idea of the Barbie, the woman that wrote it wasn't nominated for an Oscar. And I was very indignant. I thought this was terrible. This is such a patriarchal thing to have happened. It's terrible. I was on my bandwagon. And then I started to see, like your phone listens to you, all of these Instagram things from women of diversity saying, what are all these white women complaining about two white women not getting nominated when it's the most diverse female nominations ever? They should be talking about how wonderful that is. Well, that irked me. That irked me a little bit because I was quite indignant about the writer for Barbie. And then I had to stop and I had to think, why? I was like, yeah, April. It's because they have a point. It's because they're speaking a truth and it's not comfortable for me. And I don't want to look at it all the time, but it's the truth. So I need to make space for that belief and that knowing. And do we do that? Right? That's the thing about knowing who we are, but, allowing what you stand for to move, right? Allowing that, as they say, being against nothing. So I wasn't against that. Then I saw this incredible post. I think it's East St. Paul in Minneapolis that just voted in an all-female council. And I'd actually, if anybody saw on our Get Centered, I posted this as one of the stories. And the woman that spoke, I think she was Filipino, she's one of the new counselors, Filipino-American, and she said, I've never heard so much about diversity and inclusivity as I have since I got elected. Which she said after 170 years of it being all male, all white, is pretty funny. And I thought, what a brilliant statement. People all of a sudden, when they're not the ones in power or they don't see themselves represented, all of a sudden those things become very important. So it's interesting, isn't it? We never know when things are going to flip. But I also know enough to know that when things are uncomfortable, we need to talk. We need to share truths. We need to say, you know what, I think I was bringing this to the table, and I shouldn't have. Or I was uncomfortable with that label because it struck too close to home. And how do I look at that label? What does it mean? I remember my daughter was taking a university class, and the topic they were discussing was pretty volatile. But the problem is they couldn't discuss because nobody could agree on the language. Nobody could agree on what to call the thing that they were discussing. And the kids were terrified of saying anything to the professors in case other people would see them as being wrong and cancel them or attack them. That's so hard these days because we need to have these difficult conversations. We need to at least be able to discuss them. I get up here every week and sometimes I go home and I think about it and I think, I hope nobody took that wrong. Oh, I hope nobody was offended by that remark. I do. I kind of ruminate on it and then I have to stop myself because I'd never get up here again if I did that because I am not perfect. I say things wrong a fair bit. I make my mistakes, but I learn, and most of the time, I hope that I'm honest enough with myself to get back up here and tell you when I've done something wrong, or when I felt that I've learned something from a situation, which I did this past week. So, how do we allow others their opinions and stay true to ourselves or be open? And I heard this, Brene Brown was talking about when we don't like the names that they call certain politicians, We should be equally offended when they use those names against the politicians we don't like. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because we so much want to not identify with the one side. We reduce ourselves to defamatory statements or call them bad names, right? That doesn't do anything. That just lowers us. That's not acceptance. That's not welcoming. So when you find yourself wanting to do that, when you're finding yourself wanting to put someone with a different belief, a different idea, I know we can even do it with other religions. When we want to put them in the box and say, they do that, they believe that, this is how they're functioning, try to stop. And why am I doing that? Why do I feel the need to make them another? And I think a lot of the time when we do that investigation, we find out it's an insecurity in ourselves. We want people to know we don't identify. We know they're wrong. We know what they do is bad. We know that they shouldn't go forward. But is that allowing room? It's not allowing room. Now, I'm not saying to let, horrible people say horrible things. That's not it at all. I'm talking just different perspectives. If someone does, let's say, make a joke to you and it's racist or sexist, whatever, calm yourself and just take a moment. Don't laugh along, because you're not going to get thrown out of your group. Just take a moment and say, I'm sorry, I don't find that funny. Kind of like my opening joke. Just take a moment and a breath, because you will feel better. You won't go home and go, why did I laugh? Why did I not say anything? And we've all been there, because we were raised to be nice. We were raised to be nice and kind people. And when somebody says something, you just don't say anything at all, right? And then you go home and you tell everybody, this joke they told them, and it was terrible. So realize you don't have to conform. Stay true to yourself. And that still allows space for other people. And I've done it. I'm not telling you anything that I haven't done. And I've done it with really close friends. It was the hardest thing in the world. I had to say, and their kids were there, and I had to say, that's not funny. That's not okay. And it was really hard. I was like shaking inside. But you know what? They never make jokes like that in front of me again. So I established a boundary. And they know who I am. There will never be a guess on how I feel about any of those things, because I've told them who I am. And guess what? I'm still part of the group. They still love me. They still welcome me in. And on the last, the collective grand rising. So what happens when we do this? And I would like just to read one more verse of the song. Dragonflies out in the sun, you know what I mean, don't you know? Butterflies all having fun, you know what I mean. Sleep in peace when the day is done, that's what I mean. And this old world is a new world and a bold world for me. These things we do, these times we challenge our own thoughts, we challenge our own ideas, we challenge what it means to belong, we challenge the uncomfortableness of living in this time and seeing the things we're seeing and hearing the things we're hearing and learning new things. That's the new world, right? I struggle with pronouns. I try to remember to ask, but I struggle, and I have friends that it's very important to. And it's important to me because it's important to them. But they're allowing me my imperfection when I go backwards and I use the wrong pronouns with them, and they're so kind. And they're like, we still love you, get it right. And I'm getting way better. But I'm new. This is new me. This is me learning baby steps on how to be in this new world, and it's okay. And if we can't be kind with ourselves during this learning process, how do we expect to give that to anyone else? How do we ever expect to allow someone who says something inappropriate or just awkward? Just smile If it's really offensive, as I said, tell them that you don't find it funny. But I mean, if you realize, hey, we're kind of learning new things here, let's move on. Let's move on together and make this a grand rising, because the expanse that we put in here, the seats that are empty will be full, because everyone will come in that door feeling comfortable, secure, welcome, their ideas shared and accepted without lectures, without judgment. And it's such a great thing. We are so positioned as this center in this teaching to do this. And if you want to learn how, most of our classes cover all of these ideas. The biggest thing is they teach you is how not to be triggered, how to take that moment, take that space, and realize what's going on and change your thoughts and understand your thoughts and not just a knee-jerk reaction. So, stars, when you shine, you know how I feel. Scent of the pine, you know how I feel. Oh, freedom is mine, and I know how I feel. It's a new day, it's a new dawn, it's a new life, and I'm feeling good.